So now we're going to talk about ridges and hips. What I have here again is a little mock-up of a ridge. As you can see, the ridge has been cut open to allow the attic space to ventilate. And I've used this perforated C-closure on both sides. And I've spaced the perforated C-closure on either side of the roof, either side of the ridge, determined by the factory hem location of my ridge cap. So this is my ridge cap for Presidio tile roofing. This comes in a 48-inch piece, but because it laps 4 inches, you actually only get 44 inches of coverage per piece. So just remember that when you're calculating hip and ridge, it's not exactly 4 feet of coverage per piece. Once I have my vented C-closure installed on both slopes, opposing slopes, go ahead and take my pre-hemmed ridge cap, and you can either slide it from one side up into place, or if you can't slide it on, just like with the valley cap, you can open up the hem, hook it onto one side, bring it down over the other side, and then reclose this hem. Now, most of you smart roofers out there are going to look at this and they're going to say, well, what's going to happen when you get 70-mile-an-hour winds blowing and you got moisture heading up into those cavities? That's what the bird guard is for. So this is the Presidio bird guard. It's simply we call it a hog nut filter, and it just gets stuffed up underneath the edge of that ridge cap. If it's being done after the fact, you stuff it in there and go ahead and put a colored screw that matches the ridge cap down in through the ridge cap to hold it in place. Or you can install the hog nut first, the bird guard first, put your screw through the vented C-closure, and then go ahead and put your cap over the screws and hide them. One last thing I want to show you when we're talking about hips and ridges is how we finish off the end. This is the flat version of the ridge cap end piece. And it's, as you can see, it's punched out with enough extra metal, so depending on various roof pitches or various radius sizes, this piece can get cut to shape and fit to close off this end. So once I just take it, put it on there, take a pencil and trace the shape I want on the back side, and then I go ahead and cut it off to the shape I've made, leaving a flap here and a flap here that fits into these two flat areas for fastening. Just before I go ahead and install this, I want to show you how I took that end cap and fitted it. I cut it to this radius, I fitted the two flaps inside, and I folded the bottom under, and that's how the end of my hip is finished off. So a minute ago we showed you ridge, here's hip. So starting at the bottom of a hip, I've got bird guard, I've got underlayment, drip edge, and I've got a new part here, inner gable. So the inner gable is used in many places on a tile roof. We haven't talked about it yet, but the inner gable is used on a hip. It's also used on a ridge when you don't need to ventilate. Obviously there aren't holes in inner gable like there are in vented C-closure, so this will not vent. So on most of your hip applications, you're going to use an inner gable first. Notice how I've cut it to fit the drip edge here. It's on top of the underlayment. I've used the grommeted screws because theoretically, water can travel inside this part. And that's why it has the water lock here. So any wind-driven water that gets blown up in here travels down the side of the water lock and comes out at the eave. So once I've got my inner gable properly spaced on both sides of my hip, I can go ahead and slide my cap on. But before I put the cap on, I want to show you how I've prepared this cap to receive the next cap above it. I'm going to taper cut this 4 inches, which is what the overlap is going to be between these parts. So once I've got that taper cut in place, I can go ahead and slide this on. I get it to the spot where I want it. You know, I want it to come all the way over the corner here. And then I bring the next piece down that's going to fit right over it because of my taper cuts. And I want to bring it over enough so that this break in the tile right here nests onto the break of the tile of the one underneath it. And I get a nice snug fit right there.